You're being manipulated right now. Not maybe, not possibly, right now. The only question is whether you are at stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, or whether you have crossed the threshold that most people never even know exists. And here is the part that should keep you up at night. The higher the stage, the less it feels like manipulation. It feels like your own thoughts. It feels like your own conclusions, arrived at freely through your own reasoning, by your own independent mind. That is what makes it so effective. That is what makes it so hard to name. Picture it. Someone in your life makes you feel guilty for setting a boundary. Someone at work takes credit for your idea so smoothly that you start to wonder if it was ever really your idea. A partner rewrites the history of an argument until you are apologizing for something they did. You feel the confusion rise, the self-doubt spikes. Your brain starts to question its own memory, its own judgment, its own sanity. And you say nothing. You do nothing. Because you are not even sure what just happened. That is not an accident. That is a stage. A calculated, repeatable, learnable system that certain people use to hollow you out from the inside, slowly and invisibly, until the version of you that existed before them has become so quiet you can barely remember what it sounded like. Harvey Cleckley, the psychiatrist who wrote The Mask of Sanity, spent decades studying people who do this not occasionally, not under stress, not as a reaction to circumstances, but as a way of life. His conclusion was not dramatic, it was clinical, and it was cold. These people are not broken. They are not confused. They are not acting out of unresolved childhood pain or attachment wounds or fear. They are operating from a completely different internal architecture, one in which other human beings are not people to connect with, but variables to manage, instruments to use, terrain to navigate. And the manipulation they deploy is not improvised. It does not emerge from anger or desperation. It follows a progression, 4 stages, each one building on the last, each one harder to detect than the one before, each one more intimate in its damage. Most people, Cleckley observed, get caught at stage 1 and never see the others coming because stage 1 is so loud, so emotionally overwhelming, so total in its demand for your attention and your energy and your constant vigilance that it functions as a distraction, a very effective distraction. While you are drowning in the chaos and confusion of stage 1, stages 2, 3, and 4 are being quietly assembled around you. Like the walls of a room, you will eventually find yourself locked inside, wondering how you got there, wondering if the door was always closed or if you closed it yourself. So let us name them. Stage 1 is provocation. This is the entry wound. Before a manipulator can do anything else with you, they need you off balance. A calm, grounded, self-possessed person who trusts their own perception is nearly impossible to control. A person who is ashamed, confused, flooded with cortisol, or desperately trying to be understood and validated is almost effortless to steer. So the first move is always to create an emotional state that bypasses your rational mind and drops you into pure reaction. It does not have to be dramatic. In fact, the most effective provocations are not dramatic at all. They are subtle, deniable. An offhand comment about your competence delivered with a tone of genuine concern. A comparison to someone else dropped casually into conversation as if it just occurred to them. A reminder of your worst moment delivered at the exact moment you're feeling most secure and most yourself. A question phrased in a way that assumes your guilt before you have said a single word, so that any answer you give is already an admission of something. The goal is not the argument. The argument is the cover story. The goal is the cortisol spike. The goal is to move you out of your prefrontal cortex and into your amygdala, out of careful thinking, and into pure, unfiltered reaction, because a reacting person reveals everything. They reveal what hurts them, what they are insecure about, what they're afraid of, what they need, what wound, when pressed at exactly the right angle, causes them to abandon their own position entirely and start managing the other person's emotional state instead of their own. Cleckley documented this pattern with clinical precision across decades of case studies. The individual who operates this way does not argue to resolve. They do not argue because they are frustrated or because they want to be heard. They argue to map. They're conducting a survey of your interior landscape. They're learning the exact geography of your insecurities, your fears, your values, your pressure points, so they know precisely where to apply leverage later. Stage 1 is reconnaissance dressed as conflict. It is information gathering disguised as emotion. And the tragedy is that most people spend years inside a manipulative relationship treating stage 1 as the entire problem. They believe that if they could just communicate more clearly, if they could just explain themselves completely enough, if they could just find the right words in the right order at the right moment, the conflict would resolve and the relationship would finally stabilize. It never stabilizes, because the instability is not a symptom of a communication problem. It is the strategy. You are not failing to resolve the conflict. You are succeeding at being controlled. Stage 2 is reframing. Once the manipulator has cracked your foundation through sustained provocation, they move to the more sophisticated and far more dangerous work of replacing your reality with theirs, not through outright lies that you could identify, examine, and refute, through something more insidious and more difficult to defend against, through the slow, patient, incremental reshaping of how you interpret your own experience. Something you said 6 months ago gets reintroduced tonight as evidence of a pattern you did not know existed. A pattern that apparently explains everything. A pattern that has been visible to everyone except you. A moment you experienced as kind and genuine gets recontextualized carefully and methodically until it looks indistinguishable from manipulation. Your need for space becomes evidence of abandonment. Your honesty becomes cruelty. Your ambition becomes selfishness. Your healthy relationships outside the dynamic become a betrayal of the relationship inside it. Cleckley was precise about this mechanism in a way that still holds up under scrutiny decades later. He observed that certain individuals possess an extraordinary and almost uncanny capacity to present the abnormal as entirely normal and the normal as deeply suspicious. They do not need you to wholesale adopt their version of events immediately. They are patient. They only need to introduce enough friction, enough doubt, enough fog into your confidence in your own version of reality that you begin, slowly and almost imperceptibly, to defer to theirs. This is the process that psychology would later name gaslighting, though Cleckley described its precise mechanics and its devastating effects on the target decades before the term entered the common vocabulary. What makes stage 2 so devastatingly effective is that it works best on the most thoughtful, most conscientious, most self-aware people. A person who is genuinely self-reflective, who takes criticism seriously, who genuinely believes in fairness and accountability and is truly willing to examine their own behavior with honesty, will take the reframe and run with it completely. They will do the manipulator's work for them, and they will do it more thoroughly than the manipulator ever could. They will lie awake at 3 a.m, conducting an exhaustive and detailed audit of their own character, carefully producing evidence for a case against themselves that was never real, that was never based on anything except the manipulator's need to keep them small and uncertain and permanently off balance. And while they are lying awake doing that, the person who handed them that case is sleeping without any difficulty at all. Stage 3 is dependency. Something fundamental has changed by this point, if the first 2 stages have been allowed to run their course. The target's confidence in their own perception of reality has been systematically and methodically eroded. Their emotional baseline has been recalibrated entirely around the manipulator's moods, their approval, their disapproval, their presence, their absence. Their world outside the relationship has often quietly and gradually contracted, because stage 2 reframing has made those outside connections feel complicated or disloyal, or simply too exhausting to maintain alongside the constant vigilance and management and emotional labor the primary relationship demands. And now, into this carefully prepared space comes the offer. Not stated explicitly, never stated explicitly because stating it explicitly would reveal the architecture, but felt, deeply and powerfully felt. The manipulator becomes intermittently the warmest and most understanding and most perceptive presence in the target's entire life. The coldness recedes, the cruelty disappears, the approval returns in full force. The connection that felt so real and so electric at the very beginning of the relationship resurfaces with complete intensity, and it is intoxicating precisely and specifically because it has been withheld. This is not affection. It is not a genuine change. It is a dosing schedule. Cleckley noted that the psychopathic individual frequently displays charm of a remarkable and deeply convincing quality, and that this charm is not incidental to who they are, but absolutely central to how they operate. It is the reward phase of a variable reinforcement loop, the same precise psychological mechanism that makes gambling neurologically addictive and almost impossible to walk away from. The target never knows when the warmth will come, so they remain close, remain compliant, remain available, remain organized unconsciously around the hope that this time, finally, the warmth will stay. The dependency that forms out of this is not a character flaw in the target. It is not weakness. It is not stupidity. It is a completely predictable and well-documented neurological response to a carefully engineered environment. A brain operating under chronic, unpredictable stress that is punctuated by intermittent reward does not develop attachment to the source of that reward, despite the pain it also delivers. It develops attachment because of the pain. The relief is only felt as relief because the deprivation that preceded it was real. The manipulator has not become someone you love in spite of what they have put you through. They have become someone your nervous system has learned to organize itself around, someone your baseline sense of stability has become dependent on, someone you cannot locate yourself without. That is stage 3. And if you sit with that description with real honesty, most people reading this will recognize somewhere they have been, or somewhere they currently are, or somewhere they are still trying to find the exit from. Stage 4 is dissolution. Cleckley found this stage the most clinically disturbing of all, and it is the one that is hardest to name from the inside, because by the time it is complete, the target has often completely lost access to the version of themselves that existed before the relationship began. Dissolution does not arrive as a single dramatic event. There is no identifiable moment of collapse that you can point to and say, that is where it happened. It is gradual, incremental, almost entirely imperceptible in its daily motion, accumulating so slowly that each individual day feels like a small adjustment rather than a loss. Your opinions begin to sound like their opinions, not because you were argued into agreement, but because holding a different opinion became too costly, too consistently, and your brain, efficient and adaptive as it is, learned to stop generating the friction. Your preferences align with theirs not through genuine convergence, but through exhaustion. The energy required to want something different, to express that want, to defend it, to survive the response that defense reliably triggered, has been completely taxed out of you over time. You stop reaching for things, you stop generating preferences, you stop trusting the signals your own body sends you about what feels right, what feels wrong, what feels like too much. Cleckley described the social environment that forms around such individuals as one in which the people closest to them begin to wear masks of accommodation so complete and so sustained and so internalized that they eventually and genuinely forget they are wearing them at all. The target is not destroyed in any visible sense. They are adapted. They have made themselves small enough and quiet enough and agreeable enough to survive inside an environment that punished everything else. And over time, that survival posture has become indistinguishable from their actual personality. And from the inside, this feels like peace. The fighting has finally stopped. The anxiety has quieted to a manageable hum. Things feel stable in a way they have not in a long time. But what has actually happened is that the version of you that would have fought, that would have questioned, that would have looked at something wrong and said this is not acceptable has been exhausted into a silence so complete that you have stopped noticing it as silence. The peace you are feeling is not resolution. It is a surrender so thorough that you have stopped registering it as surrender at all. So what do you do with this? The first thing, and the most important thing, is to understand that the act of naming the stage you are in is itself a form of structural damage to the system that is running on you. A manipulator's entire operation depends on invisibility. It depends entirely on you experiencing each stage as a personal failing, a communication breakdown, a character flaw in yourself, rather than a deliberate and sequential and learnable process being run by someone else. The moment you can observe a provocation and recognize it clearly as stage 1, the moment you can watch a reframe being constructed in real time and name it as stage 2, you've introduced a gap between what is happening and your response to it. And in that gap, however small it is at first, lives your autonomy. Cleckley was not optimistic about the possibility of changing the individuals who design and run these systems. His clinical work across decades led him to conclusions that were deeply uncomfortable, and that the professional field resisted for a long time afterward. But he was not writing for them. He was not trying to fix them. He was writing for the people around them. He was writing so that someone sitting alone at 2 a.m, completely hollowed out and deeply confused, doubting their own memory, questioning their own sanity, wondering why they feel like a stranger living inside a life they no longer recognize as theirs, might have a map, might have a language, might be able to say, "This is not my pathology. This is not evidence that I am broken or difficult or too sensitive or fundamentally too much. This is a system, a recognizable, nameable, documented system. And systems, once clearly seen, once honestly mapped, can be exited. Here is what the next 7 days require of you. Take the relationships in your life that leave you consistently smaller, consistently confused, consistently more exhausted, consistently further from the person you recognize as yourself, and hold them against the 4 stages. Not to build a legal case, not to assign a clinical diagnosis to someone, not to win an argument or justify a decision you have already made, but to locate yourself with honesty, because you cannot navigate out of a room you cannot see the walls of. And once you can see the walls, the most powerful move available to you is not confrontation. It is not explosion. It is not the dramatic exit. It is the quiet, steady, unhurried withdrawal of a person who finally and completely understands the architecture of what was built around them, and who has made the decision, privately and without announcement, to stop living inside it. If any stage in this felt uncomfortably familiar, if something here landed in a way that felt less like new information and more like a recognition of something you already knew but had not yet allowed yourself to say out loud, even to yourself, alone, in the quiet, say so in the comments. Not because it serves the algorithm, though it does, but because someone else is going to read your words at exactly the moment they need to know they are not alone in this, and not crazy for feeling it, and not too far gone to find their way back to themselves. And if you want to go further into how power and perception and control actually operate beneath the surface of everyday life, in ways that are invisible until they are suddenly and permanently visible, subscribe. Not as a reflex, not because this video ended and the button was there. As a decision you are making deliberately for yourself, because you are done being someone else's variable. And finally, do not forget this. Throughout your life, your lovers, your friends, your companions, even your family will manipulate you. This is inevitable. The more you develop yourself physically and intellectually, the less you will fall for people's games. You can be a well-intentioned person. Your thoughts can be as clear as pure water. But the environments you enter, the people you meet, the circles you will walk into, are not filled with people as clean and thoughtful as you are. At a certain point, you must take off your blinders and establish dominance, not just over what is in front of you, but over everything around you. If you cannot manage to watch and see your surroundings, you will become a pawn in other people's hands. Until the last moment, do not wait for hope from people. Have your own plans for achieving things. Never set out on a road with just one plan. You must have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and even a plan D. The roads you walk are thorny roads. Nobody told you it would be easy while passing through them. In the morning when you wake up, you are already exerting effort just to walk, while you have a family to look after and loved ones whose bonds you must keep strong. If you are exposed to people's manipulations, you will burn yourself, and your paths will separate from those you love. It is only after that moment when you lay your head on the pillow that you will understand you have become a crowded loneliness. I love you, my friend. Together you and I are ordinary people. We do not lie. As it is on this channel, we throw truths into people's faces. A fish is caught with bait. A human is deceived with bait. Perhaps we will not meet again. Take care of yourself. Know that somewhere in distant lands there is a friend who loves you exactly as you are.